Good evening and welcome to Business Live. Coming up, government says significant progress has been made on restructuring of debt owed independent power producers as it hopes to sign next deal next month.
The indication we have is that the OCC has shared the draft MOU with their members, and they are about sharing the draft with us sooner than later.
We will be joined by the Independent Power Generators Ghana for some quick analysis on this move by government. Also in this bulletin, Ghana's bilateral creditors share draft MOU with members as an agreement is set to be finalized in the coming days to pave way for the release of $360 million IMF cash.
There is work ongoing to formalize the agreement in principle, and we're quite confident that this will be a matter of weeks, and we will be able to bring the review to the board by the end of June.
So what does this draft MOU entails? We shall be finding answers pretty soon. Also in this bulletin, former Minister of Finance Seth Te cast doubts over economists' preparedness to withstand shocks and projection of favorable outlook.
Yes, we could be lifted with the normal growth that is taking place, that is being projected from even China that was slowing down, across the globe, the strong economies, but we should be mindful of their implications for our economies.
We have details of these and many others lined up for you. Please be my guest. Thanks so much for your company. I am Pius Kojobaka, and tonight we want to begin business from the power sector because government has revealed that it has made significant progress on the terms for restructuring debt owed independent power producers, and government is hopeful the development could see a deal being signed with IPPs on how the payments will be made going forward. And Minister of Finance Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam disclosed this in Washington, D.C. at the just ended IMF spring meetings in USA. And we've got to go on Zoom and engage the Chief Executive Officer of the Independent Power Producers or Generators Ghana, Dr. Elikplim Apetogbo, for some discussions on this. Thanks so much, sir, for agreeing to speak to us on Business Live. First off, can you tell us about the current state of the debt restructuring between government and the Independent Power Generators Ghana?
Bios, let me say we have engaged peacefully and fruitfully. Fruitfully because we've tried to reach a consensus, but we are yet to tie the loose ends because there are some conditions of good faith that must be shown by the government. At the end of the day, there should be a balance. I shouldn't win while you lose, or you should not win where I lose. So we are still waiting for those loose ends to be tied.
And has the finance minister have rightly articulated an MOU be finalized and signed? What should be the expectations?
On our side, we are ready. Once government can honor its obligations or what we have agreed, we are willing to sign and move on.
And I'm wondering, how is this debt restructuring going to affect the finances of the independent power generators?
Definitely, it's going to support our operations. And most importantly, we have always indicated that our fundings are borrowed funds that must be repaid to the lenders. So once those monies are released, we will have to make repayment to our lenders and suppliers as well.
Well, there are expectations that this MOU will help address the current power crisis. Do you also share that?
The current power crisis has nothing to do with our debts. I think there is something different that has to be looked at. And we have always been available to make power available to the grid. So once we have fuel, we will generate. If we do not, there is nothing we could do. So, but they should not be linked to the debt government has to settle. They are actually different issues apart.
I don't know whether you can share this with us, but when next are you meeting government over this move?
There is no indication as we speak as to when he would like to meet us. Yes, but we are available to engage in any discussion collectively and individually as corporate entities.
Is there any time frame that these negotiations would elapse?
We expected this to happen like yesterday, but like I said, if government is able to honor its obligation under the negotiations, we will move forward tomorrow.
Very well. Thank you very much, Dr. Eliprima Fetogbo. We are indeed grateful for your time speaking to us there. Let's stay a while longer in the power sector because the Executive Director of the African Center for Energy Policy, Ben Boakye, is challenging claims that the international framework for debt negotiations has not been favorable to Ghana. It follows criticisms that the G20 common framework put forward by developed countries and the IMF as well as the World Bank has not moved fast to deal with Ghana's current debt crisis. Now, some have even argued that the lack of commitment on the part of these countries has delayed Ghana's efforts in securing a debt deal from creditors. But speaking to Joy Business in Washington, D.C., Mr. Boakye says this deal has actually saved Ghana.
It's working to some extent, but it could improve. It is not a silver bullet, and also recognizing that there are structural issues that really has to do with governance. So taking advantage of the framework, you also have to fix the governance issues. What are you borrowing for? How are you ensuring that your borrowings can actually generate the returns that will be able to pay at least for the new borrowings that you're doing? Those are specific governance issues that IMF necessarily may not want to intervene because these are sovereign countries, that have run elections and won, and sometimes they believe they should do things the way they want. So we need to tie in on the governance side to make sure that borrowings addresses some critical challenges or developmental needs that will also repay or lift people out of poverty for them to become responsible tax-paying citizens in this country. So those conversations will have to be had alongside the implementation of the framework, so that we can improve governance, we can also improve liquidity situations at the same time. But as I indicated, we need more low-interest funds in these critical moments, to come in. But tie that to governance so that when the money comes, we can map out where it is going to be able to.
And bringing it down to Ghana's situation, you think that it has helped us? If it hadn't been this approach, we could have struggled in getting a deal with these bilateral creditors or even making progress with these bilateral creditors.
No, I don't know where we would be without the G20 framework. I mean, you could imagine Ghana paying interest for the past 2 years. That would have been scary for the city. The depreciation would have been so swift because government would have crowded out everybody needing these dollars to be able to service Eurobond and other debts.
Now, rising energy costs have driven up business expenses, leading to operational difficulties for many companies. Despite this, the president of the Institute of Certified Business Analysts and Consultants, Dr. Richard Asase, remains confident that businesses analysts can devise effective strategies to help businesses stay afloat. He spoke in an interview with Joy Business at the Institute's induction ceremony for new and doctoral members in Accra.
Ghanaian businesses grapple with power outages commonly known as doomsor. These disruptions caused by unpaid utility bills, deteriorating infrastructure, and an ailing economy pose a threat of widespread blackouts. Despite these energy challenges, the president of the Institute of Certified Business Analysts and Consultants, Dr. Richard Asase, encouraged business owners to work with consultants to develop strategies to help them withstand these disruptions.
All over, we know that businesses are facing a lot of challenges, especially in our country. Even currently, you see that there are certain electricity issues that are also affecting the flow of business and also the supply chain. So, it is actually a challenge that when it happens, we expect that business analysts will analyze the business entirely and find a way, find strategies, propose strategies for businesses in this current trend. These current challenges that we are having as a country. Even though the challenges are there, they should be able to propose some strategies that the businesses can move on.
despite the challenges.
At the recent ICBAC induction ceremony, Ernest Asamoah was recognized as the best graduating student, while Franklin Opon-Amankwa received the award for Best Doctoral Fellow. Both shared their plans for the future with Joy Business.
The knowledge which I've acquired so far, we can assure with my team working in Sefwi District Akontomra Rice Factory, 2-3 years to come, as the government is trying to put import restrictions on rice and so on and so forth, will be part of that success story because the knowledge is being put to use.
The trainer have realized that once we collaborate with industry or collaborate with companies, we identify the real challenges, and when we see or we profess the actual solutions and we assist them to implement, there is no way businesses will fail, but rather business can grow and compete in whichever environment, no matter the dynamic nature of the environment.
The 2023-2024 ICBAC induction ceremony welcomed new members and doctoral fellows into the organization. The Institute of Certified Business Analysts and Consultants is dedicated to ensuring ongoing business success through the application of practical business knowledge.
Away from the power front to some other stories we are following up for you, Finance Minister Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam has revealed that the country's bilateral creditors have shared a draft memorandum of understanding on final terms for restructuring Ghana's debt. The development could now pave the way for the IMF board to disburse some $360 million to Ghana in June. Now, the Finance Minister gave more details on this agreement at a press conference in Washington, D.C.
I have to tell you that I'm very optimistic that we will reach a very durable agreement that will help reset our debt profile. As far as the bilateral creditors are concerned, you know that we reached an agreement in principle in January, but we had to now formalize the agreement through an MOU with our bilateral creditors as a group, what we call the OCC. And the indication we have is that the OCC has shared the draft MOU with their members, and they are about sharing the draft with us sooner than later. And so as soon as we get the draft and we are fine with it, that will mean we have an agreement on the MOU. The IMF is not asking for a deal with the bilateral creditors, but an agreement on the wording of the MOU, and that will be sufficient for the IMF to go to the board, because that would have signaled the financing assurances that we need from the OCC members. The issue in relation to Eurobonds is also on course. We, as you know, from the cleansing statement we issued at the end of our non-disclosure agreement, we reached an interim agreement which we had to subject to the IMF threshold. And when you subjected that to the IMF threshold, you will notice that we narrowed the gap between what we agreed in the interim with the bondholders and the IMF threshold. We narrowed the gap, very, very slight difference. But that means that there is more work to be done, because any deal that we reach will have to be consistent with the threshold, the DSA threshold of 55% debt to GDP in present value terms, and then also a debt service to revenue ratio of about 18%.
This is still Business Live. We'll be right back with more. Hello, welcome back to Business Life, and we've got to go back to our earlier story where Finance Minister Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam has revealed that the country's bilateral creditors have shared a draft memorandum of understanding on final terms for restructuring Ghana's debts. And we've got to speak to economist Professor Peter Quan for some great thoughts on this development. Thanks so much, Professor Quan, for agreeing to speak to us on Business Live. When you hear news about a draft of an MOU on the final terms for restructuring Ghana's debts with its bilateral creditors, what does this draft MOU really means?
Well, good evening to your discerning listeners and viewers. An MOU basically memorandum of understanding. So, what are the terms? How we agree to proceed on a given issue, and therefore, for me, the MOU will specify the debt exchange, the debt restructuring program, the interest payments, how much haircut each creditor is supposed to suffer, and the terms if you're going to restructure to a future date, by how many years. I think all this will be clearly specified, as well as even the date. At what point are we, what start date are we doing all this restructuring? So there are several factors that goes into it. But for an MOU to be, this understanding to be put on paper, it means you've come a long way. I don't think they start just by drafting an MOU. Certainly, there will be some talks and discussions, and some of the key elements of what has been discussed is what you will feature in the MOU, and then people would, or the parties will study the MOU and then fine-tune it, come back, and then finally append their signature. So I believe it's not the beginning. I believe strongly a lot has been happening in the background, and that is what it's come to so far.
All right, so I guess I wouldn't be wrong to say that this, what you are learning now, is not the actual MOU, right?
It's not
the actual MOU.
I would say the final MOU, because it has to go through some iterations. Man, we are talking of several creditors, and therefore there are institutions and individuals involved, and there's some discussion, some agreements, some adjustments will have to be made here and there. One size fits all doesn't work. They all have to gradually agree, and then when you have a final draft, a final document, then you can run with it.
All right, so from what we are learning, it's the bilateral creditors that have come up with the MOU. Must Ghana also have one during these negotiations?
It's basically what they come out with. You also have to study where you think it pinches so hard, you can go back and negotiate. But you cannot draft an MOU while they're also drafting their MOU. We need to have a unified MOU. So copies have been shared. I believe our authorities are studying it whilst they are at the IMF World Bank Spring meeting. And the creditors also have their copies which they are studying. So they will converge at some point and see how they finalize this and then move the process forward.
And I know this kind of negotiations really take time. What happens next?
Yes, it takes time. I think they have about up to 6 weeks or so to finalize this MOU. So hopefully within these 6 weeks, a lot will happen. A lot of background discussions will happen, and we'll see the final document. Hanging on for too long is not in the interest of Ghana. It's also not in the interest of the creditors. I say this because for Ghana, we need to know how much we owe. We need to know how much we are being forgiven. And then we start saving. If they need to create a sinking fund, which we need, we create a sinking fund and start saving so that come 2025 and beyond, we'll have resources to be servicing those debts. Then for the creditors, I mean, we say jump today is better than jump tomorrow. If they should agree now, Ghana will from 2025 start making repayments. It's better to have some part of your money paid so you can turn it around rather than being in a fix, rather than not having anything at all. So I believe as they call them development partners, they are very much willing to engage with us so that we have a win-win situation. We come to consensus on this and bring this to fruition. We want to finalize this agreement and move on as a country, and also they can also move on as creditors or investors.
And finally, before you go, because I know you are hard pressed for time, what do you make of assertions by the International Monetary Fund saying that the worst is over for Ghana? Is that really the case?
Well, I think if you compare with 2022, what we went through in terms of the high rate of inflation, in terms of what we went through in terms of exchange rate depreciation, and the uncertainties that surrounded our country, one can say that yes, it's not finally over. I don't think we've overcome everything, but I believe it's much better now than before. To some extent, or to a large extent, I'm tempted to agree with them that the turbulence is over. But then it depends on how we manage the economy in the election year, especially towards the end of the year. If we're able to be prudent in terms of our fiscal spending, then I can say that we'll grow at a much faster pace. We'll manage our debts more responsibly now than before. And one can say that, yes, the worst is over.
So we've turned the corner.
There are a couple of corners to turn. I don't think we have turned the corner. So we've come a long way, and I believe we still have one or two issues, hurdles to clear, and we ought to work assiduously to overcome some of these challenges and grow the economy so we can put money in people's pocket, we can provide more jobs than ever before.
Professor Peter Quan, we are indeed grateful speaking to us here on Business Live for your great analysis. Thank you so much, sir. Now, let's stay one longer on the economy, because former Finance Minister Seth Te is casting doubt over the economy's ability to withstand shocks after recent claims of stability. Now, the former minister's concerns are coming at a time there are warnings that rising crude prices as well as other development could derail the economic recovery. Mr. Te is also raising concerns about improved economic outlook for the country from next year. Now, he believes, or he's been speaking to Joy Business in Washington, D.C.
The U.S. economy is growing. It means the economy becomes stronger, the dollar strengthens, and when the dollar strengthens, in our case, one commodity, gold, normally suffers in price because it often moves, in the opposite direction of the value of the dollar. I'm explaining this to say that, yes, we could be lifted with the normal growth that is taking place, that is being projected from even China that was slowing down, across the globe, the strong economies, but we should be mindful of their implications for our economies.
And I get from you that, listen, let's be careful of being excited about the global economy picking up, because that could also come with some shocks for our local economy as well.
Precisely, and that is the essence of where we have to take our economies to understand, the dynamics of the global economy and its effect. So to give you an example, let me add a third one. Currently, because of the Middle East, situation, we have topping the Ukraine-Russian war. You have crude oil prices going up. Okay, in our case, crude oil prices can play both ways. With 3 oil fields, we should be somewhere in the middle of imports and exports. But being mindful of these things explains some of the policies, that are still enshrined in our Petroleum Revenue Management Act. And it says that when the global economy is favoring you, right, when demand is high in the U.S., your cocoa, chocolate, they eat chocolate and whatever, you benefit from it, right? So you gain. Gold high, right? And then petroleum on balance. Put some of the money aside because crises are inevitable. The global economy goes up and it goes down. That is why you have this expression booms and busts. Okay, so it booms and then it busts. And that is because, if you take the global financial crisis, what was the cause for it. As for natural crisis like COVID, it's unpredictable. But global financial crisis, for example, you could see the exuberance, as the then Fed chairman said, the exuberance of the market. It was boiling. So there was a lot of deals. Interest rates was going up. And no matter what, people were doing deals, right? To the extent that they were then the subprime lending to vulnerable groups who could not pay because of, the situation led to a crash of the U.S. economy. So these are the booms and the busts. And so we have to start preparing for these booms and the busts in the economy.
Seth Te in that interaction with my colleague George Wiafe in Washington, D.C. Ending the bulletin. For more stories, feel free to log on to myjoyonline.com/business. Bilateral creditors share draft MOU agreement on Ghana's debt restructuring for consideration. That's according to Amin Adam, and we brought you that story here on Business Live. Also on the portal, the worst is over for Ghana's economy. That's according to the IMF mission chief, Stefan Rede, and we also brought you that story. We have Peter Quan sharing his perspective on that developing for us. Great for serving you. Do enjoy the rest of our program. See you same time tomorrow. Bye.